Well, Boeing and bad news seem to go hand in hand. And another thing about bad news, it always seems to travel fast. And today's bad Boeing news is about the continually delayed delivery of Boeing's new wide-body offering, the 777X. And as always, the news isn't coming from Boeing officially, however, it is coming from the usual sources. And they are, quote, people familiar with the matter. Because there are always people familiar with the matter. And those people, according to Bloomberg, are saying that Boeing's 777X is now slated to fly commercially for the first time in early 2027 instead of next year in 2026, causing yet another setback for Boeing that sets the stage potentially for billions of dollars in losses and accounting charges. Lufthansa, a launch customer for the folding wing wide body, is already laying the groundwork for the latest delay. The German airline announced that it isn't including the 777X in its fleet plans until 2027. Meanwhile, officials at Emirates, the 777's biggest customer, have also grown more cautious as it is bracing for the possibility that their 777s won't be delivered before 2027 at the earliest. But who the hell knows? It might not even be until 2030 at this point. And these continued delays continue to cause Boeing to hemorrhage cash. Analysts estimate that the non-cash accounting charge could run from $2.5 billion to as much as $4 billion before all is said and done. Though Boeing has not detailed the extent of the cost officially. But executives have held meetings with major investors in recent weeks and are charting out damage control messaging that the financial impact will be spread across the overall jet program, according to one of those anonymous sources. The jet, already 6 years late, is of major strategic and financial importance to Boeing in its duel with Airbus for a bigger slice of the lucrative long-haul market. Boeing executives are set to discuss the extent and cost of the latest schedule slip for the delayed jumbo jet when Boeing reports earnings on October 29. As for Boeing, well, as usual, a Boeing spokesperson declined to comment, citing a, quote, quiet period ahead of earnings. And of course, a spokesperson for Lufthansa deferred questions on the delivery schedule to Boeing. So I guess that means a continued loop of silence all around. It was just last month that Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg revealed to a Morgan Stanley conference that the 777X certification was falling behind schedule, though he didn't provide a new timeline at the time. However, he said it isn't a technical or safety problem with the jet. However, he attributed this latest setback to a mountain of FAA certification work, like I said, rather than any new technical issue with the plane or its engines. At the time, Ortberg said, as you know, even a minor schedule delay on the 777 program has a pretty big financial impact because we're in a reach-forward loss situation, whatever the hell that means. So Ortberg concluded, we're looking at that real hard. For analysts, however, Ortberg's comments fit a familiar pattern. Boeing has often used investor conferences to signal negative news and set expectations for its quarterly earnings. The CEO's reference to program losses under Boeing's arcane accounting methodology indicated that the non-cash accounting charge would be substantial. Another delay to the start of deliveries for Boeing's upgraded 777, which was originally due to fly commercially in 2020, would also crimp cash needed to help the company leave behind years of crisis and financial bloodletting. Still, with all that bloodletting, Boeing expects to start generating cash this year, fueling optimism that it has regained a grip on production under Ortberg, who joined the company in August of 2024. Still, Boeing has already racked up more than $11 billion in cost overruns for the 777X, which has encountered a string of setbacks and faced tough FAA scrutiny in the aftermath of the two fatal 737 MAX crashes last decade. But apparently the, quote, reach-forward loss position means Boeing won't recover its development costs across the first 500 airplanes it builds and sells. Ouch, reach forward. That sounds more like a reach around to me. But as a result, the company must immediately book any additional abnormal costs and overruns as a charge to earnings. Sheila Kayaglu, an analyst with Jefferies, predicts Boeing could report a charge as large as $4 billion from the delays. That covers cash payments the manufacturer would have received next year from delivering 18 of the planes, as she'd expected, as well as customers' concessions and other costs. So with that bad news Boeing story, let's take a look back at the history of Boeing's 777 and how it became so foobar. It was formally launched in late 2013 with orders and commitments from airlines like Lufthansa, Emirates, and Qatar. Key innovations include new composite wings with folding wingtips, a newer GE9X engine, and more efficient aerodynamics. When the program launched back in 2013, Boeing had expected the first 777X, likely the 777-9, to enter service around 2020. Over time, this date was revised several times, moved from 2020 to 2021, 22, 23, 4, 5, 6, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so what caused some of the delays? Well, the question really should be, what hasn't? There were certification hurdles, regulatory requirements, FAA and other authorities have become stricter, especially in the wake of other Boeing incidents. Meeting updated certification standards has taken longer than initially expected. Also, problems discovered during testing, including structural components, the engine mount link cracks, have led to pauses in flight tests, inspections, and redesigns. Then there was other technical and engineering issues. The GE9X engine had issues. The folding wingtip mechanisms and composite wing structures also had some issues. Then there was production and supply chain and quality control problems, and also impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic, and then strikes and labor issues also contributed to the delay. So to sum it all up, the 777X began production in 2013 with a scheduled delivery date of 2020. It's now slated for delivery no sooner than 2027, and if we're being honest, you got to think it's going to be more like 2030 before any of us gets a chance to ever see the new Boeing Big Bird in the sky near you or me. And with that, that's your update on the continued delays of the Boeing 777X. And for the very few of you who may not know what FUBAR means, Google it. It's a fun word. Oh, and before you go, please be sure and let me know down below.